Kylene, come on. We're singing in a choir. You sound like a soloist. Please keep up.
But I thought I was blending really well. I mean, I thought I sounded good with you.
Well, you sound good, but not with me. Okay, we really need to talk about this. What's the difference between singing in a choir and singing as a soloist?
Let's talk about it today in the Singable podcast.
Okay, let's do it.
Singable Toolbox.
Kylene, I know you have extensive experience with both choir singing or chorus singing and singing as a soloist. So I thought it would be so interesting today to talk about what are the differences, because actually we can't sing the same way when we're singing with other people as when we're just singing a solo. So I thought we can just start talking about choirs, and maybe I can ask you, what do you think is the biggest difference between singing in a choir and singing as a soloist?
Ooh, I almost want to throw it straight back to you, Noomi, because I know you've got extensive experience in this as well. But the biggest difference is I would say the freedom that singing solo can bring as opposed to singing with a chorus, or I guess we'll say choir from now on just to make it simple. The restrictions of singing with a choir, but I think it's also worth it in the end because of what singing in a choir gives you, the experience it gives you, the training it gives you. But I'd say the biggest difference is the freedom of singing solo as opposed to the restrictions involved in and the demand of singing as part of a choir. What do you think?
Yeah, so when speaking of restrictions, it sounds so...
I know, it
sounds a bit difficult. But I think what you're trying to say is just like we have to adapt to other people around us, right? And make sure that what we're singing is all blending together so that... Because the thing is, nobody should stand out when you're singing in a choir. So I've actually had before people saying after a performance or after listening to a recording, and they say, "Hey, I heard your voice." And then like that's
devastating.
They mean well, but I'm like, "Oh no, I have failed." Because that's what we don't want when we sing in a choir. We don't want to stand out. It's supposed to be all one voice, or at least 4 different voices if you're singing for harmonies. So you're not supposed to hear a single individual stand out.
It's a technique that's involved in singing in a choir, which is called blending. If our wonderful listeners at home haven't heard of it before, we're probably going to talk about a few different terms today that are a little technical, but at the same time, this is a great way of everyone hearing about them and finding out about them. So we call that blending, don't we? It's when you want to blend with the rest of the choir. Firstly, you want to blend with those in your group that you're singing with. And in a choir generally, it's all divided up into soprano, alto, tenor and bass voices. It's a bit of a tradition really, isn't it? That the 4 of them.
Yeah.
That's world.
It's a nice piece of tradition.
Yeah, it is. And it's done world over. So we have our lowest voices are the basses in the men, and then the higher voices are the tenors. Then in the women we have, and this is a bit of a misnomer, isn't it? That altos are the lower voices and then the sopranos are the highest. But we've talked about this before, about how sometimes as a soprano, you're not a soprano, are you? What happens? Tell us, Noomi. You've done this too.
No, it's funny. I think, you know, in a perfect world, this is how it would be. Like, okay, so the low female voices are altos and the high female voices are sopranos. But in the real world, sometimes it's more like, okay, who knows how to read music? Who knows how to keep to their harmony even when it's not the melody? And those people often end up in the alto section. Whereas those who are sopranos not always are the ones who are very good at singing high notes, but they're the ones who can sing the melody. Oh, I feel like I'm insulting sopranos. I'm so sorry.
No.
But sometimes it becomes like this, and that it's the people that maybe aren't that good at reading music, or they just want to learn to sing the melody.
And I can see that there's just a little bit of post-traumatic stress there for yourself. Perhaps having been in that situation. I was in that situation for a long time as well. Like I'm a soprano singer, but that's where I belong, truly. But I was in altos as well because it was a need at the time.
Yeah.
But then later on, I got to be a soprano, and can I tell you, it was so much easier.
Yeah.
So
I guess
not having to learn all those difficult parts.
Yeah.
You know, some harmonies, but nothing compared to the altos. They work so much harder, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's fun too. I think it's really fun. And speaking of learning your harmonies and stuff, maybe we can talk about how to do that, and also how to listen to the other parts around you, and how to stick to your specific part.
Absolutely.
What do you think? Do you have any tips for someone who's like a beginner singer in the choir?
I think listening to what it should sound like, if you can get a recording of how it sounds, the piece of
all
music
of it together.
The piece of music that you're singing, you're performing, and you can get used to hearing it together. And then go through and get to be a little bit familiar with everyone else's part. So you start to understand, okay, this is where they're going to go. When I go up, some of them are going to go here, some of them are going to go off to the side a little bit here. And you just get more familiar with the different notes you're going to hear as you sing. But then, I don't know about you, Noomi, but for me, it's like in everything with singing, practice, practice, practice.
Yeah. Yeah,
Drill.
it always comes down to practice. It's true. Yeah. No, definitely. And I think it also helps a lot if you can learn a little bit of music theory. So, you know, like when you're looking at the full score or all the different parts, then you can see, oh, okay, so I'm an alto, the tenors are singing a C and I'm a third above that. So then I know what that's going to sound like. And this sounds probably really difficult if you're not familiar with music theory. But once you are and you know how different intervals or like the distance between the different tones, what they're supposed to sound like, it's going to make it so much easier to find your part and even maybe read the music without having even heard it before. So that's something that I'm really looking forward to adding to the Singable Toolbox membership once we're up and running, like creating a music theory course for singers particularly, because it does help a lot.
I think that's fantastic. So for friends that are listening, that means that in the future we're going to have up on the membership site a course that's available that teaches basic music theory to all our friends out there who haven't had the opportunity to learn music theory before. Those notes that you see, those squiggly lines on the page, as some friends have said to me, I don't understand the squiggly lines. And it's, I mean, fair enough, but it's nice, especially with keeping in mind that you want to be able to sing, you want to be able to use it for your singing, just to be able to learn the basics of it. That's going to help you grow. And for instance, too, I've got there's quite a few friends of mine and singers who have joined the local choir not far from where I live. And so they go and join the choir and they sing with a group of other women and they really enjoy it. They have a great time. But again, having a little bit of music theory behind you makes it so much easier. And learning some of the tips that we're talking about today too is going to help as well, of course.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm just thinking when it comes to reading music, it's definitely not a must, because I know a bunch of choir singers who are actually really good at just listening to their parts and memorizing them, and they sing really well. And it's not like anyone could ever tell when they listen to their singing that, oh, they don't know how to read music. It doesn't work like that. But awesome. I always say that it makes things easier, just like when you learn to read normal text, then you can just get a page of text and it will be so much easier you can even read something you have never seen before. You can read a poem right from the page and you didn't even know what it went like before you got the paper. And it's the same with music. It just makes it much easier. You don't have to memorize everything, but you can actually read it.
Yes.
So it's not just us being snobby, but it's to help you. It's to make things easier.
And I think it's definitely a key to helping you to be able to lock in with the other singers. And what I mean by that is, you know, if there's 3 or 4 parts running at once, then knowing where your part sits in the middle of it, sort of like what I was talking about earlier, that becoming familiar with what it sounds like around you, what the other parts sound like, it just helps you to be able to stick to your line as you're going along, being able to read the notes and anticipate
yeah.
where you're going next and what you're doing next. Oh, that's right. I go up next. That's right. Just, it just gives you a little bit more confidence. But,
Yeah.
But yeah, actually going back to that topic of working with the choir and some of the techniques, I think that idea of locking in is super important, that you feel and you get used to through your practice with the rest of the choir as well. You do your individual practice first. Then with the rest of the choir, you learn to find where your note is and lock into that. I think that's super important.
But I guess it's a combination as well of maybe being able to read the music, so you can just read what's going to happen, but also that practice where you know, for example, oh, the tenors are going to sing this little bit there, and then I know that's my cue to come in. So sometimes you don't always have to count like how many measures rest you have, but you know what's going to happen. So it's like a combination of memorizing and reading, and that's when I feel like I do my best job as a choir singer.
I mean, I think what we're sort of discovering and coming to the idea of is that, you have, when you're singing in a choir, you have multiple senses working hard. So, because the other thing is you're listening to everybody else, you might be reading the notes in front of you, or the words, of course, but then, or you might have to memorize it too. But then you're also looking at the conductor and watching the conductor.
Oh, yeah. Some of us do, not everyone.
Oh,
but we should all do that.
Let's talk about conducting.
I think that's
and conductors,
it's always
shall we?
a problem making people actually look at the conductor, because otherwise it's just waving there and like there's no use. Poor persons.
It's a bit of a love-hate relationship sometimes, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, tell me,
what's your experience with conducting? Do you like to do it yourself?
I wanted to ask you.
Gonna say it.
I wanted to ask you. Well, okay. Well, how about so what about conductors? Let's talk about others first.
Okay, nice. I like that.
And what's been your experience?
I could go on and on. I've worked with conductors of very different backgrounds and skill sets. One that I really enjoyed working with was a guy that his ear was just out of this world. He could really tell, like, when one single individual out of 30 was off, he knew exactly who it was, and he he thought he had a poker face, but he didn't really. But he was really cool, and he could really hear, like, really fine-tune everything. It was so cool.
You just reminded me of a story. Did I ever tell you about when I was recording in a choir and the same thing, it was a man with perfect pitch was conducting us.
Yeah.
So brilliant in many ways. And he thought it was me that was singing out. And it was the girl right behind me, just above me, right behind me.
Ooh.
And I could hear her. And he came out and he said something twice and was looking at me, but wouldn't say who it was.
Yeah.
So I went out and I went to the bathroom. So, and they would keep recording if you needed to go to the bathroom or something. So I went out to the bathroom and I could see they were recording. So I went in and sat next to him in the control booth. And he heard the same voice, but I was sitting next to him. So the
That's
poor guy's
really
like,
clever.
"Thank you, Kylene. You can go back in now. Thank you." And I went, "No worries."
That's so funny.
The cheekiest thing.
It's very clever though. I mean, it probably helped because it helped him to do his job.
And I was copying it. It was right behind me. So I understand why he thought it was me. And it was so loud.
Yeah.
But it is amazing when you work with those kind of people.
Speaking of beginner conductors, my first ever job after school was actually as a choir conductor. Yeah.
Oh, that's
so I had
cute.
2 choirs, and I was like, I felt like I did a pretty good job, I must say. But it also taught me that it's kind of hard to deal with people sometimes. Because it's like, you know, people have their own idea of what they want to sing and how they want. So they were comparing me to the conductor they had in the past, which had a very different teaching style. And I was 19 and like I didn't have that much attitude and like, self-confidence. So that was kind of difficult, I must say. But it was a really nice experience because it really taught me to learn all the different parts because I had to know them because I was going to teach them. And it just set a really good foundation for me in the years after when I was singing myself in a choir, because then I knew how to memorize everything and how the different parts were working together and all of that. So yeah,
Wow,
and it was an interesting first job to have.
what amazing training, like from such a young
Yeah.
age to be able to do that too. That's fantastic. Wow. All right. So then, now I've got a question for you.
Yeah.
So having conducted straight out of school pretty much, that's amazing. What about the idea that sopranos rule school in a choir? Do you think that's true? Do you think they're the most important ones in the choir?
I think this is a hard question to answer, because I mean, oftentimes they do sing the melody, so we kind of need them. However, when I arrange for choirs, I usually like to spice things up and add melody in other parts as well, because I just like to see the sopranos suffer a little bit. But I mean, it's all about working together, really.
Yeah.
I don't know what you asked the question. What's your opinion? I feel like you have an opinion back there. That's why you asked.
Oh,
right?
I'm just a selfish soprano. No.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
But I've been in alto too. So, no, I think exactly like you said, it's more interesting when they share the melody line with others as well. But I love it when they give sopranos other, like harmony parts as well. Like, don't take it easy on the sopranos. So it's great when you're working with an arrangement that's like that. And I do love like doing older music as well, like Monteverdi and sort of 1600s music, and that sort of like that beautiful.
That's fun. Yeah.
So
with the, like more counterpoint parts. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a little bit more
really
difficult and more interesting, and Baroque. That's I feel like those eras, the older eras, it was a bit more interesting naturally, but it's more modern choirs that it gets a bit boring with the sopranos doing the melody all the time.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think the others work harder and I admire them a little more. But I do, man, give me a big note at the end with a soprano splitting off, and there's soprano 1 and soprano 2, just like all of these different parts. There's alto 1, alto 2, so that sometimes you think there's a 4-part harmony, but there's actually an 8 or more part harmony in a song that a choir sings. So I think they have their place. They're to be admired, but they're not the divas that we think they should be.
Right.
They have no reason to think they're special, really. Everyone's playing their part.
Speaking of being special, one thing that I think is really interesting to discuss is vibrato in choirs.
Well, that's a problem.
Because I feel like, that's your opinion. It's a problem.
Well, mainly
Tell me
for
more.
sopranos.
Why do you think it's a problem?
I feel like the sopranos are the worst at that. But I think a little bit. I think if it's just certain parts at certain times, then it's fine, especially like for me, I think as a soprano on the higher notes, then sometimes it is good to get, especially if you're recording, at least get a take or two of some vibrato just to put a little bit of polish on it. And by vibrato, we mean that little, like that little wobble in the voice that makes it a little bit more rich, as opposed to a straight tone. I even started to do vibrato at the end of that.
I know, because it's really hard to just turn off once you're used to it.
It's hard. That's really hard when you're doing choir
And you know
singing.
what? Actually, vibrato, it almost gives it actually gives the voice a break. So what happens is that the brain is sending signals to, we don't know exactly how it's working, but some kind of signals to the vocal folds and everything around there to sort of fluctuate. So the volume and the pitch fluctuates, and it actually gives us mini breaks all the time, which means that we can sing for a longer time and the voice is more relaxed. And vibrato is actually oftentimes a result of the voice being balanced and relaxed. So I think it's really interesting because sometimes people will tell you to just, like, nobody is allowed to sing with vibrato.
Yes.
But if you're going to sing for hours on end, it's not sustainable. And another thing is I saw an experiment on YouTube that was really interesting where they added more and more people. So at first they just had 2 people singing the same line with vibrato, and then you could tell, okay, it doesn't blend. It doesn't sound that good because you could really distinguish the 2 different parts. But the more people they added, the singing with vibrato, the less of a problem it was. So by the time it was like 6 or 7 singers, it wasn't a problem anymore.
Yes.
And oftentimes when we sing in a choir, we will have about that amount of people in a part or more.
Yes.
And then it won't really be a problem. So I think that's really interesting. As long as no one's like overdoing it and like, you know, really
going crazy.
standing out. Yeah, because some people can have that
Yes.
and they might need to work on it. But
that's actually
I
interesting.
think it's really interesting.
Yeah, you've just reminded me that it's like when you're recording versus when you're live in a choir. So when you're recording, it's often that they say no vibrato, or maybe one take will get at the end with a little bit of vibrato. They try to minimize the vibrato in the recording. But when you're singing live, like doing like a concert hall with, 60, 90 singers, I've like, I don't know how you've been when you've done more live stuff. I was encouraged more always by the conductor that they were encouraging us to have some vibrato, especially on the sopranos, because they wanted that richer sound, especially if they're trying to beef up the sopranos a little bit if they're sounding a bit thin. So how about you for live stuff? Have you had that sort of feedback?
I think, to be honest, I feel like the Swedish tradition is quite straight, like not too much vibrato. We'd never want to stand out as Swedes.
I was going to say, it's your culture.
So it might be that. But when I've listened to like Italian choirs, for example, where they have more of a really classical opera tradition, then they add it and it sounds great. So I mean, I think it's just down to where you come from and what kind of what style of music you're singing, and
that's it. I was thinking of it like
varies.
especially Verdi, like singing something like that, like from Aida, or like one of those big choruses.
They're gonna add vibrato. Yeah, exactly. So
that's right. We've talked a little bit in the past about breathing, the difference of breathing as well when you're in a choir versus when you're singing solo. What's been your experience with that?
Huge difference. I think when you sing in a choir, it's just so much more important to get the breathing right, because oftentimes you will have very long phrases that you can't breathe in between. You can't just be like, hey, I'm just gonna add in a little breath there, because people are gonna notice it. So you have to wait until there is a break, and then you have to breathe very silently, like no one's supposed to be able to hear it, And of course, we also have staggered breathing, where we take turns within the part if the phrase is just too long and it's impossible to do it all in one breath. And then we have to just agree with each other where we're going to do it. Yeah, exactly. Or just like you skip a syllable, take a breath, and then you just continue as if nothing happened.
That's interesting.
But when you sing as a soloist, you can breathe wherever you like. It's very free. It depends on the style and stuff as well. And of course, you don't want to add it in really weird places. But if you want to break things up, or just it's more like talking. Really, I would say sometimes we would just add a breath whenever we feel like we need to.
Mid-sentence if you need to.
Not breathing in really weird places, but it's much more flexible, I would say. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the word I was looking for earlier that I didn't say, was the discipline. The discipline involved in being in a choir it's a lot more. It's a disciplined approach, because you have to fit in with everyone else for it to be successful. You're all working so closely as a team.
Exactly.
I was actually going to say, going back to working with the team and that idea of working with your conductor that we talked about earlier too. Having a good conductor is just the best. Like, I've had some conductors who it's like, where is that cut off? But it's wonderful when you get to know people that you're working with, and you all have like sort of an unwritten agreement that you all know, and we're going to follow exactly what's written on the page, so that it's two beats, and then we all cut off together and we all watch each other, because the conductor's not going to give us that cut off, and we know it.
Oh, yeah.
But when you have, and this is, I think what has inspired me with the little bit of conducting that I've done, is having someone who's really passionate about what they're doing, and having someone who gets you involved in the story of the song as a group, and is really working the dynamics of the song. The dynamics for
yeah.
the friends at home is when it gets louder or softer. And maybe you can explain some of the Italian terms for us, particularly in a second, Noomi.
Yeah, we always speak Italian, don't we? I don't know how this came about.
Music.
But no, Italian is the music language. So, for example, if you see a bold P on a page, it stands for piano, which means soft in Italian. So you're singing quietly. Or if there's a bold F, it stands for forte, which means loud. So yeah, we have little cues like that, and also like the little arrows, crescendos, where it goes louder and louder and louder, and diminuendos where it goes softer and softer and softer. So yeah, we have little notes like that oftentimes in the music that are either pre-printed or we can add them in together as a choir. We can't just choose them ourselves, but yeah, just so that everyone is on the same page.
That's the beautiful thing about working with a conductor, that you can kind of shape the song together. So it's a slightly different interpretation depending on the conductor as well, that, okay, this is the part where I really want you to, have that crescendo coming in where you get louder and louder to that moment. And then it's like forte, but, double forte, extremely loud.
Fortissimo, yeah.
Fortissimo, that's the one, triple. Hey. So, yeah, or, this, and then come back down to mezzo, which is the little M, which means medium sort of loud, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I love...
Pretty loud MF or pretty soft MP, yeah.
Yeah, just a little bit, like a mezzo soprano, just a medium soprano. No, not just. Let's not. I should take that away. But that
we're going to insult so many people with this episode.
Some of the best sopranos in the world. That's what I'm saying. But yeah, working with a conductor to shape the song and to bring the drama into the song, I love that. And I loved when I did get to do a little bit of conducting, like working with the choir to bring them into it and bring them up in. Like get them to be part of the song and own it.
Yeah.
We were talking too about the idea of recording versus live with a choir. What do you think, Noomi, about some tips for recording? What are things that you've found when you've been recording as a member of a choir as opposed to live?
Yeah, so I've tried recording both where all the altos are together recording and also when it's just me on my own. And for both of them, I would say that it's so important to know your part, like as well as possible, especially when you sing on your own, because you have no one else to lean on. You just have to do it as if it was a solo, but you have to sing it as if you're a choir singer. So it does require a lot from you, actually.
Yeah, because, you're always you get trained, especially when you work live for a little bit with a choir, but you learn, and the whole point of a choir is that you blend into one voice. And so to lose that all of a sudden as you're recording must be incredibly difficult. But when recording as a choir, definitely having the sections of alto, tenor, soprano, bass. I know some have mixed in the past, and some people like to do that, especially if they're a very well-trained choir. But I think for the dynamics of the recording, you're much better off singing in separate sections or recording those separate sections with a microphone individually or various microphones.
Yeah.
Because then, especially in the mix later on, when they're mixing the sound, they have control over the blend a little bit more. Yes, in an ideal world, the conductor's doing fantastic and is conducting the blend perfectly and everyone's singing to blend perfectly as one voice, but it doesn't always happen. So especially if what you're getting fed through the headphones isn't a great representation of the rest of the room as well. So I think with recording, it's great to split it up.
But there are advantages of recording more separately, because it means that, if you're 30 people recording, one person is going to mess up every single time. Like there's going to be something that's not perfect. And when you record one person or one part at a time, then the chances of everything going right, at least for one take, is much bigger.
Absolutely.
So it's going to be much easier. And also you can take things out, maybe in the editing after. So science is cool. Technology helps sometimes.
We respect audio engineers and we want to give them as much control over recording as possible.
Yes.
One last controversial thought. Apparently there's some myths going around about choirs. You were talking about that earlier. What was this myth?
I heard this once when I was young, and I had to look it up. And it was that if you have an orchestra or a choir,
Yeah.
that it's a good thing if someone is slightly out of tune.
What?
They don't play or sing as like everyone else. And the theory was that, if you have that, then the sound will be more rich.
I'm sorry.
And I was like, no, this just can't be right. And I looked it up, and actually what happens is rather that person is just not gonna, you're not gonna hear them as well as everyone else, because everyone else is singing on the same frequency and that person is slightly off. So what happens when you're 100 people singing on the same frequency is something that's called constructive interference, where that sound is just boosted and everything else just drops away. You won't be able to hear it. So when you're at a football game and the people are chanting, you will only be able to hear the melody as it's intended, even though some people will definitely be off key.
There's people off key at a football match.
Yeah, for sure. There's beer involved, of course.
A national anthem or whatever they sing. I don't know, the club song.
I don't know. I don't know why I went with this example, because I would never go to a football game in my life. But yeah, I hear them sometimes. I hear them from afar, and I'm amazed at the constructive interference they're achieving.
So it is a thing. It's true, because I've been in different crowds when everyone's singing, and it's like, and even at a concert, you hear that it sounds like everyone's in tune. It's like, this is quite impressive.
Exactly, yeah.
They're good, and they say, you're such good singers. Whereas in actual fact, those people that are off...
Some of them are.
Yeah, they drop away. They don't get heard. Isn't that fascinating?
But I guess it's quite encouraging also, because it means that if you're singing in a crowd and you know that, singing I'm not that great of a singer yet, and sometimes I'm off key, but actually that doesn't matter, because it's all going to be lost in the big picture. So you don't have to worry about it. You can just sing.
That's so. It's actually really encouraging.
So just go for it.
And that's why you should join a choir.
Yeah.
If you have that opportunity.
We should start one. Can we start a swim choir? I hate that there's delay on internet. Like, it would be so nice if we could just all sing together.
Have a live.
Online,
we can look into this in the future for Singapore Toolbox for the membership site.
That would be cool.
We could. I've actually, we've done a choir where we recorded individuals and put it all together for a project once. So
we should do that. That would be fun.
Okay. Yeah. Well, more on that later once we've discussed it.
We have big plans for the future, people.
We do. So we did say that we talk a little bit about solo performance as well, as opposed to choir. We're going to talk about solo a lot that's what we generally do talk about. But
exactly,
What do you find are the main differences especially when you're live, when you're singing solo?
I think especially that when you're in a choir, you have to just be on pitch, not stand out. You can't do any little slides up to the note or add little vocal fry if you feel like sounding cool, or you're not supposed to belt, or all of these things that make you stand out. But when you're a soloist, then you can do whatever you like, shape the music however you like. You're telling the story, so you can just use your voice to do it your way.
That's so true. And I guess when it comes to recording, for myself, I find that the freedom involved with working with a microphone as a soloist, and even live as well, if you're singing with a microphone, there is just so much you can do. You can use the microphone to your advantage, and like I say to students, let the microphone do the work for you. So learning proper microphone technique, which, hey, that would be a good future podcast. Let's talk about microphone technique another time.
Yeah, we should invite your microphone building husband.
Wow, what a great idea.
Should interview him.
We'll have to do a little interview. Fantastic. We can ask all about how microphones are made.
Yeah, he's already taught me a lot, so I'm looking forward to that.
I love it. Okay. But it's true that you can use it to your advantage just with when you're singing with a choir and you're recording, or it's live, even if they have a microphone, it's further away, it's getting the blended sound, whereas you can get in close with a microphone, work it so that you can have a breathier tone. Like you're saying, you can have some more nuances in your voice if you want a little bit of vocal fry in there, And then when you choose to sing louder, maybe do a little bit of a belt or cry, pulling away from the microphone, which we call riding the microphone, then you have all that freedom and flexibility, and you use it as almost part of your performance, which is what we can talk about for a long time in another podcast.
Yes, definitely.
And I think the other point of working with other musicians is important too when you're singing live.
Yeah.
And even recording, but as a soloist.
Exactly, because I feel like when you're a soloist, then you're working directly with the musicians. But if you're in a choir, then you're accountable to the conductor, and you're like his instrument. He's just like playing on this big instrument that consists of a lot of people. And then maybe you have a piano or even a band with that. But that's not the people you are communicating with the most. But when you're a soloist, of course, you're creating music directly with them. So
you're your own conductor. Yeah. Oh, I love it. I love it.
Exactly. It's so true, though.
Yeah.
That's what I like with conducting, that you have this big instrument to play with. The first time I ever tried conducting, I was 14 years old, and I got to conduct an orchestra I was in. So obviously young people, and it's not like it was this big, amazing thing. It sounds amazing if it was like, oh, I conducted a symphonic orchestra. That's not what I'm trying to get across, but it was just a really cool experience where I was like, hey, I have this immense, huge instrument that I can just play with. And I thought it was so fun. So that's the difference.
Oh, man, what a great way to start with doing all of this. It's fabulous. So maybe to finish off, we can say when it comes to singing in a choir, would you recommend someone reaching out and trying to find a local choir if they're not already part of one, if they're interested in singing?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a really great way to both socialize and to learn music. And even there are studies that show that choir singing is really good for your health. People are talking about, your heartbeats get synced, or I don't know if that's true, but it's really beneficial to your health, singing with other people. So yeah, definitely, if you have time and you're up for it, try it. It's always a good idea.
It is, yeah. Singing with a group of people is always encouraging, especially when everyone's going for it.
Yeah.
And it's encouraging. And it just takes one or two to really get into it, like especially if it's community choir or many people sing in a church environment. And I think when people want to get in there and give it their best and encourage others to sing out as well, I think it's a really good example, and hopefully you bring everyone up with you. That's the idea.
Exactly.
We want everyone to enjoy their singing.
Yes.
But also like you said, it's great training, fantastic training if you get the opportunity. If not, we have some ideas for the future to be able to help you to learn a little bit more about music theory so you can get those advantages you get from working with a choir and apply those to your solo singing as well.
Exactly.
So
that's why I'm so excited about the Singable Toolbox membership. That because not everyone has time to join a choir, and not everyone feels comfortable to do that.
It's true.
But then being able to go online and have a community of people, and you can post your singing and you can send in your singing for us to us for feedback, and you can watch these video courses and learn more and build on that and work your voice in a way that just works with your schedule and your confidence. And I think it's such a great way to work on your voice. It just works for everyone.
Yeah. It does. It's so flexible, which I do love. I'm already looking forward to getting stuck into it at the end of February.
I know. But actually, when this episode is launched...
we'll be very close.
Either we have already launched it or we're very, very close.
Dangerously close.
It's going to be awesome.
Fabulous. Well, thank you, Noomi. It's been awesome catching up with you. And I just love how you share your experience. It's so good. And it's funny how, we have similar experiences at time, and then we have great little stories.
I know. Yeah, we could talk for ages.
It's always great finding out about your adventures.
Likewise.
Good on you. Well, thank you so much, and thank you to everyone for listening today too. And we look forward to seeing you again next time on the Singable Podcast.
Stay tuned. Keep up the singing. Keep up the practice.
Singable Toolbox.